All right, welcome back to the Osceola's First Impressions. As my name is Pat Burnham, I am joined by former FSU offensive lineman Mark Salva to talk about FSU's fourth dominant win in a row as they roll to a 49-17 win over Louisiana on Saturday afternoon in Doak Campbell Stadium. We are live from Doak Campbell Stadium. And Mark, obviously, we talked about this being a game where FSU needed to come out and take care of business, and they certainly did that in convincing fashion in another game that was basically over by the time Florida State went to intermission and the locker room at halftime. Just talk about your thoughts on the overall performance of Florida State, as really this game was over in 30 minutes.
Well, again, that was our hope going into the game, that Florida State would show the sense of urgency to take care of this game early, and to do so in a convincing fashion and just pick up where they left off, right? Because winning's a habit, and the standards of performance are what they are, and they're very high right now for us. So the fact that they came out and took care of business, kind of did what the defense gave you. They didn't do anything really fancy. Played a lot of base defense, base offense. Didn't blitz a lot. Didn't do a lot of tricky stuff. They weren't going to let us throw the ball deep, and I think there was a couple of plays there early where they were going to try to take a shot, but it wasn't there. And as a result of doing that, obviously the running game was there and able to knock out some runs and some rushing touchdowns. Jordan looked really sharp in terms of his running. His throwing was okay. There's some drop passes. Like I said, they weren't really give up a lot of deep stuff. So, he took a few shots that probably weren't there. But just really pleased with the effort and getting it done early.
Yeah, listen, I scored on 5 of the first 6 drives in the first half. The defense was phenomenal once again in the first half, really all game. Louisiana did not have any success until they started rolling second and third teamers in the game in the third quarter, including Tate Rodemaker and A.J. Duffy, who both started this. Obviously Tate started the first possession, led FSU to a touchdown. He was taken out of the ball game. A.J. finished the game for Florida State. That's kind of one of the more curious things coming out of this game. We would have, I think that both of us would have expected that Tate would have seen at least a couple of series, maybe 2 or 3 before giving way to A.J. But just talk a little bit about, how to read into that. Was it making sure Tate was sharp? He was in his first only drive, and then get him out of the game and keep him healthy for next week. Kind of, how do you see that? Why that played out the way it did?
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear what Mike has to say about that. The only thing I can think of is, at that point, were there second team line guys in there?
Yes, by the time A.J. got in there, there were. Yes. Tate was with the first teamers.
Tate was with the first teamers, yeah.
First team offensive line, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that might be part of it. It's our depth at quarterback is curious about, not very good in terms of, the drop off, right? And so you got to have Tate healthy for these next 2 games. Get him in there with the first team line, let him show what he could do. He did a fine job, obviously. And then you start subbing in some of those second team and third team guys on the offensive line. Maybe not risking Tate injury, and at the same time, letting AJ get some really, substantial playing time, and just to kind of see how he handles it. He hasn't got a lot this year. I think he's only had a couple of plays here and there, but so it was a chance to really put AJ under the gun and get some good film on him and just kind of see how he responds in this exact moment. We got to keep all our guys, our 2 deep, healthy, and that probably has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, it was amazing. Some of the things, it was so dominant. Some of the things I circled in this game were on, I think it was FSU's third drive. I actually saw someone tackle Trey Benson one-on-one. It was one of those games. It really was. And listen, my other note on FSU's second drive was that we finally found a defense that was not going to try to cover Lawrence Tuafili on the wheel route with a defensive end or defensive tackle. They actually put a defensive back on him, and it changed. I think Jordan had to run on that play. So it was one of those things, one of those games where FSU was just dominant from the start. Listen, all kind of superlatives. I would like to talk to you about the secondary, particularly in the first half. FSU had more pass breakups than Louisiana did completions. It was 8-7, and of course they broke up several passes in the second half. I guess if anything on defense, they were Louisiana finished 19 of 36 for 159 yards passing, but again, Florida State had double-digit pass breakups. Just talk a little bit about what you thought about the secondary play versus Louisiana.
Yeah, well, they're really playing well. They're really getting in phase and doing a good job of, especially on these back shoulder throws or these fades where they're not locating the ball necessarily in the air, but they're playing the man. And when the guy shows his eyes and his hands, doing a good job of getting the ball out of there. They seem to have found a little rhythm and doing that much better than they have even earlier in the year. I mean, I think that was a big point of contention at the Wake Forest game with AT, what's his name at Wake Forest, and that was Wake Forest receivers.
AT Perry, yeah.
Perry, yeah, and those guys making those catches when we have our guys right there and that just missing the ball, not playing the ball, and they seem to have obviously improved drastically in that area. So that's good for them. Even more impressive to me, though, I mean, I think what set the tone of the game really was that fourth down stop by Jamie Robinson, man. That was a smack on that fourth down. And when he did it, I said, there's no way they made that first down. I was surprised they even spotted it where they was, but I guess the official spotted it on the side away where the back had his left shoulder. He met it with his left shoulder, but the ball was in his right hand, and it kind of kept it back at that half yard that we needed there. But what a hit by Jamie Robinson, and of course they're tackling so much better also. So they're doing a great job.
Yeah, listen, we talked a couple of things in the press box during the game. First of all, Jamie Robinson, sometimes I think we undervalue him, or at least don't talk about him enough. I mean, he's consistently one of the top 2 or 3 tacklers in every game. He doesn't get the pub that maybe a Jared Verse does or a Tatum Bethune. And not that he's a quiet guy. He's got a great personality, and, he's good when he's in front of the media. But, he's probably as dominant as his position as anybody is on FSU's defense.
Yeah, or in the league. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, who's playing better in the league at his position? I don't think anybody. And you know what? He keeps making plays like he's made these last several weeks that you can not help but talk about him. He is definitely obviously a leader on the team. And again, the spine of your defense is really strong when that guy, you got Bethune and you got Fabian in the game, and then you got your edge guys playing really well. Yeah. That makes this defense really tough. It really does. And having that guy, that safety that can play run equally as well as he can play pass is just so valuable, because now you can hedge on either side, whether you're playing run, playing pass. And Jamie given the ability to do that is just really valuable. I mean, I don't think since Derwin James that we had somebody that can, lay the wood down in the box and at the same time turn around and cover. And so, yeah, you're right. We need to talk about him more.
Yeah. Now, listen, we talked a little, we heard Mike Norvell say before the season started that, listen, the competition is never over. Kids will continue to develop during the season, something we probably don't give enough credence to. But a guy that certainly looks like he is continuing to develop on the defensive side of the ball is DJ Lundy. He hit 6 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 1.5 tackles for a loss. And just is a guy that seems to play more each week and better each week. And, we thought that linebacker depth could be a issue coming into the season, but he has come in and given Tatum Bethune some breathers and has been really good, really since the Miami game.
That's a good call. Yeah, that's a good call, because, early in the year when I would see, either Kalen or Bethune come out and Lundy go in, I'd be like, oh man, but now I don't bat an eye, and his tackling is so much better. Just really laying the wood. I mean, he is a thumper, true, but he seems to be playing pass defense much better, making plays on the pass, covering guys, out of the backfield, being in phase with the backs coming out of the backfield, and just his tackling is so much better. So yeah, I don't bat an eye if he comes in there. I think we got a strong 3-guy rotation right now, for sure, and that really helps.
Yeah, listen, unofficially 6 tackles for DJ, led the team with 4 solos. And of course, we did get to see a lot of players play that we normally don't get to see. Brendan Gant got his most extended time at linebacker, again, tied for the team lead with 6 tackles. And actually, he had the most solos right now, unofficially at 5.
Yeah, he looked good.
I kind of, before we get into the guys that were backups that played a lot, and obviously there were some frontline players that played outstanding. I thought that Tatum had a good game. Obviously, we've talked about Jamie. We also saw more of 35. Leonard Warner played an excellent game, 5 tackles. Seems to be more comfortable in that role.
Peyton showed up again, right?
Yeah, he did. But I do want to talk to you a little bit, go back to the offensive line. We had a discussion on Osceola Tailgate, which we taped on Thursdays and has been available to Osceola subscribers and listeners and viewers for now 3 days. And we talked a little bit about the fact that, and listen, we know a lot of these postseason awards are subjective, but they announced about 11 or 12 teams as semifinalists for the Joe Moore Award, which goes to the best offensive line in the country. It's a relatively new award, but obviously us being linemen, former linemen, we probably pay attention to it a little bit more. But Florida State rushed again for the 6th consecutive game for over 200 yards. And listen, again, it's subjective, but we went over the list on Friday. Is FSU, and I won't ask it in relation to the award, but nationally, is Florida State's offensive line getting the credit it deserves?
Well, probably not. And a lot of it has to do with who we're playing too. We're not playing, frontline guy other than Clemson. Now they counted themselves against Clemson. So, I have no doubt they can. I think the fact that these games have been blowouts has a factor. And, these lists are made early on. Right. You get the watch list early in the year, then they hone it down about halfway through the year. I think the middle part, that 3-game losing streak probably, kind of took the attention off of them. And then by the time they start rolling around here late, it's probably a little too late for the people that are not paying attention like we pay attention to them, right? We watch them every day. We talk about them every day. And it's different than somebody over in Wabash, Wisconsin, or, Seattle, Washington to think about FSU's offensive line. So, it is what it is. You and I both know how far these guys have come, and you and I know, and our fans know how good these guys are playing. And the results these last 4 games bear that out. And I think, a good showing Friday night will just further their reputation and just bring that much more respect back to that position.
Yeah, and of course, one of the benefits to having this kind of dominating win, and we talked about this as one of the keys going into the game, you want to see Florida State be able to take most of its first-teamers off the field. They certainly did that on offense within the second series of the third quarter. Defensive frontline guys played a series or 2 longer before they started doing mass substitutions. But, listen, offensive linemen, we saw Jalen Early and Bryson Estes and Quayshawn Sapp and Kanaya Charlton. And the guy that really stood out to me when he came in at right tackle was Jalen Early. I don't know how much you got to pay attention to him, but really athletic, moves really well, made a couple of key blocks in there on some successful drives. Just talk about the importance of these young guys getting reps in a blowout win as you're getting ready to go to Florida. And listen, there's also a component of this, the portal's going to start 15th. You probably want to see what some of these guys can do when the bullets are flying. So just talk a little bit about that. I mean, there were some guys, obviously, Josh Farmer stuck out on defense. We saw Sam McCall make a couple of tackles. Azaria Thomas played, George Wilson, Byron Turner. A whole bunch of guys saw their most extensive action of the season. Just talk about how that benefits Florida State moving forward.
Well, like you said, you kind of get a read on how these guys do when it's live bullets. In a practice situation, in a drilling situation, everything is really broken down into components, and you got a coach right behind you, giving you immediate feedback after every rep. When you're in practice, and you don't have the benefit of that in the course of a game. You're out there by yourself, and so how they respond and react, and how when they run these plays and these techniques and these calls and these combos at full speed, they've been drilling these things, and usually these drills are broken down into such granular components that they can see, oh, okay, I see how this works now in a live situation. They start to kind of understand why they do all these little pity-ante little things that they do in practice, and when it all comes together in the course of a game, and they start to see that and you start to get the feel for it, and that has like a feedback loop. So now when you go back and you start practicing these techniques and these little things that you do in drills and in practice, now you say, okay, well, this is how it's going to happen in the game. I can really apply it here in these drills, and I know I need to work on this and this and this. So there's that the value of that is immeasurable for a young player as they start to understand what it is they're trying to do. Because you did see it, you see the talent in a lot of these guys, but you also see kind of the indecision, or you kind of see the, not exactly sure, it's not exactly, full speed a lot of times with these guys. And so that experience is just so valuable.
Yeah, listen, 4 different quarterbacks completed passes, 10 different runners got credit for at least a carry, and 13 players called a pass. Probably, listen, we'll talk about player development in other. We don't want to get too much into it, but listen, you watch Marquiston Douglas, the catch he had on the sideline.
Wow, what a catch!
With a touchdown. I mean, I don't think we saw that any chance that he could make a catch like that in preseason camp. A guy that's continued to get better. That's got to do a world for his confidence and obviously, in his role in the offense moving forward.
I want to know how big his hands are. That ball was just swallowed up that one hand, didn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that thing, wow. Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously it gives him confidence. And look, winning is fun. Winning is so much more
listen,
fun.
This is, I've jokingly said before we started this, we probably just could have canned our last 3 first impressions episodes and just put Louisiana, where we said Syracuse, Georgia Tech, or Miami. We're basically talking about the same thing.
Seriously.
Yeah, and listen, Brian, first of all, thanks for watching us. And you're right. Mike Norvell has always told us that he has an offense for playmakers, and he found some in the transfer portal and has developed some this year, and he is certainly not afraid to spread that ball around and make sure I'm not sure he's trying to keep everybody happy, but that does.
I'm gonna tell you something. It was curious to me because we lined up early in the game, a lot of different personnel groups, some different formations, but a lot of base offense, right? And so, I said in my leading up to the game, I'd be curious to see how FSU, what they give Florida kind of to work on.
Yep.
I'll tell you what, we threw a lot of stuff, personnel, which we've done all year. But I love this offense and our ability to, the sheer inventory of personnel groups, plays, motions, the different things. I mean, if I'm a defense coordinator, what do I work on?
Right.
What do you work on? I mean, you're limited the amount of time you have to practice, and the amount of time you have. You got to decide what you're going to stop and how you're going to stop it. And Jordan being able to, running the ball like he did today, I mean, he hasn't done that very much this year, and he's kind of.
I wasn't sure I wanted him to be quite honest with you.
Well, yeah, exactly, but they had to because they took all everything else away. Right. They were really playing the run halfway decent. I mean, we had a couple of big runs, but we haven't had, and you had Trayshawn Ward's run, and that's essentially a quarterback run. But they did a good job, and they took away the deep ball. Well, now you got to. Well, what's left? Well, you got Jordan. You got the quarterback who can run the ball and make people miss. Right. Extend plays. Throw the ball. So, yeah, I mean, what do you work on? And now Florida's going to have to pay a lot of attention to, Jordan Travis, with the ball in his hand. So that opens things up for other guys, opens the passing game up. I mean, it's really interesting to see how you defend this offense.
Yeah, well, listen, they may have run this play before, but on their 4th touchdown in the second quarter before halftime, they kind of ran a little waggle play with some levels concepts that really created some open space. I believe the pass went to Toa Feely, but I don't think I've seen that play before. You're right. And maybe they have run it. If they have, it's been a while. But anyway, just talk about how Mike has done such a great job of game planning each week.
Yeah, well, again, the beauty of the offense is any number of ways you can be attacked. If you have a weakness or we have a matchup advantage, we have a way to get to it. A lot of times, you're kind of restricted in the way a defense plays, the matchup you have, but you don't have a way to get the ball to that person. You don't have a way to get that isolation that you're looking for. But with the variability we have on offense, there's a way to get to it, however you need to get to it. And I love the design. I love the way that it seems Jordan has a mastery of it. And that's the other part of it, right? Because his ability, that's a lot of stuff for a quarterback to orchestrate, because not only is he looking to, run the play and execute the ball handling and the throws, but he's also getting us in the right plays. He's also getting us in the right running game. I'm sure we have runs called where it's like, you want to run into certain looks or certain sides of the defense, and he's got to move it back around. He's got to communicate to the line, and he's got to do all that in the short amount of time that you have on the play clock. So it's just, I really like our offense.
Yeah. Well, listen, they took care of business handily for the fourth week in a row, and now we get to move into our favorite week of the year, Gator season, where we go gator hunting for the next 7 days. And Florida State will take on what has to be a beleaguered Florida team after they lost to Vandy today. But one of the things I want to ask you about, Billy Napier was the head coach at Louisiana the last 4 years, and his offensive coordinator / associate head coach was Louisiana's current head coach, Michael Desmarais. And, listen, you have to think Mike's a very young coach. He'd only been a college coach for 6 seasons before he got the head job at Louisiana. 4 of those were under Napier. What can Florida State take away from this game? Because you have to think that there are a lot of similarities scheme-wise, play-wise, philosophy-wise between what Louisiana did today and what Florida will try to do. Obviously, the players will be different and better and more dangerous. But what can Florida State, both offensively and defensively, take away from this game, knowing that we probably saw a lot of similarities between schemes from Louisiana to Florida?
Yeah, well, there's obviously a lot of carryover in their practice and their schemes and how they handle things, obviously. But really, I mean, there's not a lot of difference between a lot of offense. I mean, everybody runs the zone read, everybody runs the RPO. Everybody has their own little versions of that stuff. So, you're right. The difference is the people that run it. It's not the X's and the O's. It's the Jimmies and the Joes. Yeah. And so, even though there's going to be carryover in terms of mentally, processing the information you have to process and knowing the assignment football, but obviously the difference is going to be in who's throwing the ball, who's catching the ball, who you're trying to block, who you're trying to tackle. All that's different. And that ultimately is where, our guys got to be smart in knowing, where to hedge, where to cheat, where to, call a combo when you need to have a combo. Whereas against Louisiana, you probably could handle it one-on-one, some things like that.
Yeah. On a short week, am I overstating it? I mean, how important was it to get some of these guys off the field early? I mean, it's only, it's less than a day's worth of difference hour-wise, but I mean, between game times. But how important was it to get some of these guys rest going into Florida week?
Well, I think it's a huge deal. The fact that it's a noon game, it was over early. You got guys out, because I mean, the number of plays you play, you get sore. I mean, I don't care who you're playing, you're throwing yourself around. You're going to get sore, and you got to go through that recovery process. And obviously, not having an extra 30 plays on your body makes a pretty decent difference. The thing's going to be mentally just the routines that you're used to in the course of a game week. It's going to be changed up a little bit, but both teams have it, and it's not a bit. It is what it is. And advantage to us, we don't have to travel. We don't have to travel back today. We don't have to travel to go to the game, and that's a huge advantage for us.
Well, we're going to talk a lot about Florida between now and the time we start throwing that bird in the oven on Thursday as we get ready for the Florida game. But listen, Mark, we thought this Florida State team, was going to be different than the teams we'd seen the last 4 or 5 years. We were right about that. We had a lot of evidence at practice that backed that up. We also said this was going to be a fun team to watch, a lot more fun than what we've seen the last 3 or 4 years. I'm sure that this team has not exceeded their own expectations. Listen, I had them 7-5, 8-4 going into this season. They've certainly done that and have a chance to go and get a 9th win against their most hated undefeated rival. First of all, as a former player, how fired up are you about next week? And how fired up are you about the fact that Florida State has a chance to go 9-3 in 2022 in Mike Norvell's third year?
Well, I get really geeked up about this game. You know, I get geeked up at the Miami game too, but this one for sure. This one is a little more personal because where we grew up, it was a little more influenced with you know, Florida people around and Gators around. You know, you don't have a lot of Miami fans typically. You know, usually the people you grew up around were either Florida or FSU, and so yeah, there's a lot of bragging rights and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a little more personal, in a lot of ways. And you know, it's to be 9-3 at this point is really, or to be 8-3 rather,
Right.
looking to be 9-3 is just, yeah. I mean, beginning of the year, I was hopeful. I was like, and I was like, I said 7 wins, and I was like just hoping it could be 7 wins. And the fact that we blew that out of the water, I'm geeked up. I'm excited, you know. And like you said, I can't wait till they play again. I love watching this team play football. I really do.
They are fun to watch play. They really are. And listen, hats off to them. They've had an unbelievable year and have a chance to finish off the season in grand fashion next Friday night here in Doak Campbell Stadium. I do want to ask you this. We talk about rivalry games, and we'll wrap it up with this last question. But we talk about rivalry games and how you can throw out the records and, you know, to some extent, I'm sure that is true. But my more specific question is Florida State is coming in on a roll, and Florida lost to Vanderbilt today. Florida State's going to come into this game with a little bit more confidence than I think Florida is. You know, Florida's got to be doubting themselves getting beat by Vandy. Certainly, I don't think you can say the Gators were overlooking the Commodores after they beat Kentucky a week before. But, you know, how much of this advantage does Florida, or if they have any, does Florida State have with the momentum they have going into this ball game on Friday night?
Well, they're in a winning way. They're in a winning habit, and that goes a long way. The confidence is off the charts. I mean, you know, Louisiana got there on the goal line, and we had that goal line streak going at the time, and the defense rose up and stopped, and that showed me a lot of pride for them. You know, honestly, I'm kind of glad Louisiana scored, and just to get all that off the table, and then we're not sit here and talk about, you know, hadn't scored in 4 games, and if Florida were to score a touchdown in the game, then everybody just kind of get deflated. So that's off the table. I'm glad about that. But, you know, look, Florida's they're gonna be ready. They're gonna sit there and we're gonna hear it. Oh, well, we played in the SEC, you play in the ACC, and you know, you guys haven't played anybody during this streak, but you're getting ready to play. You know, and you're gonna hear all that noise. That doesn't matter. They're playing. FSU is playing at a high level, and they're in a good way right now, and that goes a long way. Belief is off the charts, and that goal line stand showed that to me, and offensively too. I mean, go down. I know what first 2 or 3 drives. I mean, we scored in the last 3 or 4 games in the first two or 3 drives, right?
Yep.
Every game. So I mean, obviously the confidence is off the charts.
Yep. Well, Mark, we could sit here and talk football forever, but we're not going to, because we got a lot to talk about going into Florida next week. And we hope you'll join us next week for Osceola Tailgate. We'll have notifications of that. But listen, FSU rolls to 8-3 with another dominating win, 49-17 over Louisiana, with Florida coming in limping after a loss to Vanderbilt this afternoon. But we'll be back next week, all week, to talk about the Florida game. And obviously, Mark, as you said, these things are so much more fun to do than they have been in the past. But congratulations to this Florida State football team as it secured its 4th win in a row in dominating fashion, and getting ready to take on Florida next week. We'll be back, and we'll see you next week after the Florida game. Mark,
Go Noles.
End it for us.
Go Noles.